just as you can see our names. So if you put your name on one of these and see it before we can see it. I know it's a little tight, but we'll do our best. Pass the Thank you. I'm sorry, don't want to understand. Just your first name. First or last? First and last, or just first? Okay, this is the program for to be a lawyer, to be a judge, and one of the first things I want to do is make sure that y'all do know who each other are. And my name is Rita Fry, and I am a professor of law at the John Marshall Law School here in Chicago. And I am going to be the moderator for the conversation we're going to have today. The program has changed slightly. There's not going to be a mock trial portion at the end. We're just going to talk and see if there's some ways we can help you with some answers to some questions. Or I thought an idea for sharing different ways that you might like. The other people who are up at the table with me are our panelists, and they're all honorees of the History Makers program, having achieved distinction in the area of law. And for that, we're extremely grateful that they were able to come out today and share with you a lot of the wisdom and advice that they have. But we're particularly interested in knowing who you are as well. So after they briefly introduce themselves, I'm going to ask each of you to briefly introduce yourselves, and then we'll start talking about some of the questions that I have that I'm going to ask, and then you can have an opportunity to ask questions as well. But throughout the entire hour, I want you to feel free to raise your hands and ask questions at any time that something occurs to you, because sometimes you're thinking of a question at one moment, but if you have to wait before you can ask it, you forget it. And we don't want that to happen. So it's going to be very interactive, a term that I'm sure you're familiar with from working on computers and whatnot. And we'll see how it goes. To my left is attorney Roma Stewart, who is a Chicago-based attorney in private practice. To her left is attorney Rita Fry, who is the former public defender for the state of, for Cook County rather, the county of Cook, and which is incredibly high honor for anyone, much less one of our history makers. And to her left is, thank you, W. Gregory Wims, who is founder of the Victim Rights Foundation. So that we have a panel consisting of educators and private practitioners and government officials and consultants and community activists all. And they will take the time to, again, tell you a little bit more about themselves when we begin, which I'd like to do now. And as I said, after they finish introducing themselves, I'm going to ask you, if you won't mind, to share with us a little bit about yourselves. Roma?
I was a law school dropout. I entered law school at the University of Chicago. I went for a year and a half. I dropped out. I got married. I had 2 children. I moved to the other side of the world, came back to the United States, and got involved in some litigation. Just like that, I was asked to be a public school teacher, a substitute teacher in the school that my children attended, but they wanted me to sign a loyalty oath, an oath that I would never strike against the U.S. government, that I would never join any organization that advocates overthrow of the government, and I refused to sign that loyalty oath. I said, that's clearly unconstitutional and against my conscience. And as a result of that, I got involved in a lawsuit. I started remembering all the things I had learned in law school years before. I said, gee, maybe I would be in this place long enough to finish law school. So I applied to Georgetown Law School. I got accepted, but guess what? They wouldn't accept any of my credits from the University of Chicago Law School. They said, that's old history. You have to start all over again. So I had to go through the whole first year of law school all over again. So I know that stuff cold now. I've had it twice. But when I graduated from law school, one of my early jobs was to run a program for the DC Bar Association on employment discrimination in the federal government. And I got very, very well versed in the law of employment discrimination and how to sue the federal government. So I got recruited out of that to work for a small firm that had a big case against the Pullman Company. You heard of the Pullman Company? Well, this firm was suing the Pullman Company for racial discrimination because a Pullman porter could only be a porter. He could never be a conductor, even if he was doing all of the conductor's work and all of the porter's work, because of his race. So we represented every single, well, actually we represented 80 of the plaintiffs in the case. The case went to trial in Denver, and I worked on a lot of the Pullman case. And I became really knowledgeable about federal civil rights law, working for that firm and working for that other area. So then I got mad at the firm one day because they wouldn't let me take a big case in Connecticut. I had no idea how expensive it is to litigate a case in a different state, you know. So I got mad with the firm. I quit and opened my own office. And then I learned the hard way. Sometimes learning the hard way is the way where you really, really learn it, you know. Someone can tell you till they're blue in the face, but until you've had that experience yourself, when you're trying to figure out, now, how much money do I need to keep this office open for the next month, and how will I be able to pay my secretary, and how will I be able to pay myself some so I can operate. But anyway, I did undertake a lot of litigation in the District of Columbia, which is where I was living then. I had lots of suits against federal employees because the federal government was the major employer at the time. And then when I moved back to Chicago, I worked for the Attorney General as the Solicitor General of Illinois. I was in charge of all the appeals. Because although I considered myself a trial lawyer, the judges would throw out all my cases. And I would have to go up to the Court of Appeals where I would win the appeal because the judge was wrong, of course, and then go back down again and try the case. So I became very, very good at appeals. So when I came back to Chicago, the Attorney General asked me to be the Solicitor General of Illinois, which means I was responsible for all of the appeals that the state of Illinois did. So I've had a lot of experiences in the law. I talked to one group of high school students and said I mostly sue the federal government, and they all started cheering. And I thought, well, why are you cheering? We need the federal government. What would we do without the federal government? The fact that they do something wrong from time to time doesn't mean that we don't need them, of course. So in a nutshell, that's what I do. I've done a lot of lawsuits against colleges and universities and school districts. One of the things I worked on for a very short period of time was the Little Rock school desegregation case in its 8th appeal. 8th appeal. Do you realize the Little Rock school desegregation case that started in the 60s was still going strong until just a few years ago? That every time something new would happen in the school system, there was an appeal. And so that's one of the things I worked on. But one thing you need to know about the justice system is it isn't always fair. All right. I will save that for later.
Good morning. My name is Rita Fry, and until last year, I was head of the Cook County Public Defender's Office. The Cook County Public Defender's Office is the second largest public defender office in the United States. We represent people charged with criminal offenses, anything from a traffic violation through capital murder. I decided when I was young that I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't know how I was going to be a lawyer, but I thought it's a good idea, and I'll figure it out as I go along. And I was very fortunate that when I was in college at Loyola, one of my professors said to me, well, you know what you have to do to even go to law school, let alone be a lawyer. And I said, well, no, I don't really. So he explained to me that first I had to take the LSAT, which is the law school admissions exam. You have to pass that with a certain score to be considered by the law school. And then you have to apply to law schools. And when you apply to law schools, all the law schools require an application fee. The application fees, if you apply to a lot of law schools, could be quite expensive. You could wind up spending close to $1,000 because each law school has its own fee schedule. Most of the law schools, if you can prove that you are indigent and unable to pay the fee, will in fact waive it. So I said to them, well, some schools I could pay the fee because it was only a couple $100, others I couldn't. The end result was that of the 3 law schools that I applied to, I was accepted at 2. The one that I went to was Northwestern. I went to Northwestern's law school, and when I graduated, I knew I wanted to be a trial lawyer. To my mind, trial law is the only way to go. I wanted to be in a courtroom. I wanted to be fighting in a courtroom. I wanted to be representing people. I didn't want to do appeals. I didn't want to do any kind of cases where I was going to be sitting around in an office all day long trying to figure out contracts and things of that sort. So that became my path. So as a trial lawyer, I have tried every kind of case from traffic through death penalty cases. I've tried over 30 murder cases. I have represented people in some high-profile murders as well as what unfortunately can be called a routine case. And in 1992, I was appointed as the first woman to ever hold the job of public defender in Cook County. And the office was an office of 550 lawyers. We had a $50 million budget. And I was responsible for not only the lawyers, but the budget, as well as all of the clients, because you will find in Illinois has a unified court system, which means all the judges have the same jurisdiction. So when you see a case, and in fact still, even today, my name is on every criminal case that goes through the system, because as a public defender, when I was representing people coming through the system, I represented them maybe at the bond hearing or other things. So that's basically what I did until last year when I retired. I retired and enjoyed retirement immensely for a year. And most recently, I have taken on a consulting contract with the City of Chicago, and I am now the independent monitor for the CHA's plan for transformation. So I am the person that monitors the contract between HUD, the City of Chicago, and CHA, and the tenant organization on all the public housing that is coming down and all the public housing that will be replaced, including the mixed income housing. So that's me as I sit here today.
Very good. Thank you. I'm Gregory Wims from Gaithersburg, Maryland. I think I traveled with Mr.
Yes.
David, and I'm glad to see his students. I started out of the church. I got involved at a very young age in what we call prison ministry, turning the gun campaign. I was 19 years old and encouraging the gangbangers to turn their guns back. This was some 30 years ago, and also in voter registration. From that, I moved to the NAACP, and all this is volunteer work throughout the church and in the community, and became the local state president, youngest president in the history of Maryland at the time. And then I was elected 2 years later because of my active activities to be the state president. So I was the state NAACP president, and I also was the youngest president there. But while I was with the NAACP, I found that there was a larger problem affecting the African American community and quite frankly America as a whole. And that was a problem of people being victims of violent crime and no one really speaking up for those victims. All of us know, we've heard of Jesse James, we've heard of Bin Laden, we've heard of these people who are well known for terrorizing folks, but we don't know the names of the victims. So back 8 years ago, I founded an organization called the Victims' Rights Foundation. And it started when, like yourselves, seniors in high school and one freshman in college, 3 young girls were leaving a party and a man abducted them and he killed all 3 and he dumped their bodies on the side of the road. At the time, and this was 8 years ago when we started this was one of the most horrific crimes to hit Washington, D.C. area, because Maryland, I'm in the suburbs of Washington. So as I talked to some other business people, we started this foundation to assist those families in, number 1, burying those young ladies, number 2, working with the families to try to get over the grief that they received, and then 3, we made a commitment that we would go stay with them until the trial came and we would be in the courtroom with them. And this is pretty much what the Victims' Rights Foundation does. And before ending, I would say the most, probably you have heard of what our work, 2 years ago, unfortunately, the sniper shootings in Washington, D.C., when the students, literally, students like yourself, were on lockdown for a month. You couldn't go outside or recess. You had to be marshaled into the school with guards because we didn't know if the snipers were going to shoot another student at school. As most of you know, he killed 10 people within the first 3 weeks in the Washington area, mostly in Maryland, my community. And then, as we found out later, he had killed several others throughout the country. Oh, they had, the young man and the person. But with that, our foundation got involved and we raised $500,000. And this, again, this is all volunteer work within 2 months to help those families because most of the people who were killed were either the breadwinners, whether it was the mother or the father. They were the breadwinners of that family. And there were 19 children who were either they lost their mother or lost their father. So that money was used for them to try to get their lives back together financially. And again, you here in Chicago and all over the country heard about that and you heard about the work we were doing. And so with that today, I would like to talk about, as the lawyers talk about the justice system, is that we never forget the victims. And finally, we push strongly nationally now, we're working nationally, that in sentencing, during the sentencing phase, if a person is found guilty, that the victim will be able to address the judge and have to let the judge know and the jury the impact that that person had on their lives. So hopefully we'll talk a little more later.
Well, thank you. I do want to be sure, though, that we keep our audience's needs and interests in mind and try and get as much information imparted to them that they can actually use, so that when, and if they do pursue a legal career, they do so with more information than they came here today with. I'd like to begin with, but certainly you can begin to see the range of careers and opportunities to pursue your own very specific interests that a legal career can afford you. And that is probably, I would say, one of the key features of choosing law as a career path. There's no area of life in this country or any other probably, well certainly not in the United States. There's no area of life, there's no particular industry, there's no environment, there's no set of people who you like being around or where you like to be. There's nothing that you yourself personally may already know that you prefer to have in a job that you couldn't find in a legal career. There just isn't. Because no matter where you might like to spend your time or who you might like to spend your time with or how you might like to spend your time, you could find a place to do that where they need lawyers to help whatever the enterprise is. So that one of the things I tell my law students every single semester for the last 16 years, and I've been teaching on a full-time basis to young people who are already in law school, is that I have yet to find anything in my life so far that can really give you the type of freedom to be in control of your lives and your family and to provide security for yourself and your family in a variety of ways more so than a legal career, absolutely, hands down. I mean, there's a lot of work, but there's an awful lot of freedom as well. And even if you do choose to work for someone else, you do so fully aware of the fact that you do so by choice. And that's very liberating and very empowering as well. So I think the comments so far speak to a certain extent about being empowered and about having forged their own way and thought about what they wanted to do based on, in some cases, the things that they knew when they were very young and based on things that happened as they proceeded, which of course is life. What I'd like to start by doing with you to pull you into the conversation so we know a little bit more about you and what kinds of directions we might take the conversation into is to have each of you tell us your name, the year you're in school, what school you attend, and what interests you most about the law. And if your career aspirations are not about necessarily in your mind about being a lawyer, what your career aspirations are. It doesn't have to be law related. So Patrice, would you mind starting?
My name is Patrice. I'm a junior at Lincoln Park High School. And I have different things that I'm interested in being when I grow up, and law is one of them, but I don't know whether I want to be a lawyer or like a forensic scientist or something.
My name is Nancy Jones, and I'm a junior at Gwendolyn Brooks College Prep, right in Missouri. And I recently have been considering a career in law because I like to hold debates in my class. I take women in history. In my history course, I've had A's and B's since I started school. And also I'm in Target Hope, and I take African American history. And I really do, I read your biography or whatever in this book, and I really do understand a lot of things that I do that interest me. You are interested in also. As African American history, I love African American history. I take a college course. I take a college course at what's that college? Robert Morris College every Saturday.
She's already good at seeking co-counsel.
At Robert Morris College with Professor Dixon, and I just sit there in front of him and just take notes. It's just amazing. And I've recently been interested in a career in law. I don't know what law, but something in law I want to do.
Okay, wonderful. China?
Okay, well, my name is China Bond. I also go to Gwendolyn Brooks. I'm a sophomore, and we both go to Target Hope, and we both have Professor Dixon, and I think through Professor Dixon, I've been considering a career either in psychology, that's like my main focus, and public policy. And so I really love my African American history, and that's something that I really would consider.
My name is Tiwana Hastings. I attend William H. Brown. I'm in 8th grade. And I don't really know what I want to do yet, but I was thinking about being a lawyer. But I'm not really for sure yet.
My name is Kira Noel. I attend Brown Elementary. I'm in 8th grade. And really, I don't know what I want to do when I get older, but I'm thinking about law because it's interesting and like you get a better understanding of what criminals go through in a daily life, and it's fun to like debate with other people about what's going on.
Next person, Lisa. We see you there.
My name is Lisa Raby, and I go to Lincoln Park High School. I'm a junior. And I don't really know what part of law I want to be in, but I'm interested in law.
Why are you interested in that?
Because
You just are.
yeah,
I like to have my students actually answer questions.
My name is China Russell. I'm also a junior at Lincoln Park High School, and I'm interested in tax law. I don't know, I've always been interested in that. I like the fact that in tax law you have to take a lot of risks, and it's I want to play in a big playing field. I want to do it big, and I like it.
All right.
I'm Jamaica Brown. I also go to Lincoln Park, and I'm a junior. I've always wanted to be a lawyer, criminal law. Ever since like Johnny Cochran and What's that football player? OJ, yeah.
Okay.
I've always been interested in that. I've always thought of myself as little Jane Cochran. So there's never been any other field except criminal law.
When you were watching the O.J. Simpson trial and you sort of identified Johnny Cochran, was that because he was a defense lawyer in the case, or did you pay attention to that part of it?
I was like 7. I don't really know, but I just know that that's something that I always wanted to do. Plus, I'm very competitive and I like to debate, so I mean, that looks like the field for me.
In a sense, yeah?
Yes. Wow. Hey, so how you guys doing today? Alright. Yes, my name is Cynthia, and I don't necessarily want to be a lawyer, but I am considering becoming a detective on the police force, and I know it requires criminal justice courses, reading like that. So I'm really considering that, and if not, I would like to work for DCFS because I'm somebody who has to be interactive with people, and DCF does require some knowledge of the law.
You know, since you're a junior, what you do?
Yeah, and I'm a junior going to university.
Thank you. Tim?
I'm Tim Rafanti, and I'm a senior at Lincoln Park High School. I'm interested in real estate because I don't know, it's where the money's at, basically. And I don't really want to work a 9-to-5 job. I kind of just want to sell houses once in a while and make my money along the way. That's about it.
Well, there's nothing, they didn't say anything wrong.
James.
I'm James. I'm a senior at Lincoln Park High School. I'm kind of interested in like being a writer or a movie critic.
What kind of writing do you do?
Maybe short stories or novels.
Great. And Ms. Foster is using
Oh,
salsa.
yeah, I'm just in,
Obviously, you're not.
I'm looking at some of my students here who, I teach at the Walt Disney Magnet School, I am a teacher. African American history, I've been working on my master's in that, right here at the center, and I gotta get back into it. But in college, I was taking classes in business law. But right now, I'm just here listening and just taking in things that I could possibly use in the classroom.
Welcome, thank you. Feel free to contribute in any way that you'd like to. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of you have expressed a lot of things that resonate with me, and I'm sure with some of our panelists. I'd like to give each person an opportunity to say some things that crossed your minds as you heard what some of the young people said that it makes you feel that you have something that you can share with them that might assist them as they go on with the aspirations that they've expressed.
Well, I'd like to say one thing actually to Chandra, because she's, as a new entrepreneur, a person, for the first time in my life, I'm actually in business for myself. A tax lawyer was the first person I needed to know and talk to. So I would say to you that I'm glad that that's an aspiration of yours, because there are not as many African Americans in tax law as you might imagine, and very few. And I hope that what you do is, as you're going through college, make sure that you have the basics, meaning all the accounting courses, contract courses, economics, because whether you're a business person or an athlete or an entertainer or anyone who is in business, you need a tax lawyer, because the government always gets their due. And if you don't understand what is required, you find yourself, as many entertainers and athletes in particular find themselves, in tax trouble, owing millions of dollars, and they lose everything they've accumulated because they didn't understand about the tax laws. So I applaud you for doing that, and I hope that what you do when you do go to college is make sure that you have the kind of foundation that makes you viable. I mean, so many times people pick careers without the understanding of what the underlying requirements are, And so then they find themselves out there not being particularly viable. So since yours was so unusual in my mind, I just thought I'd throw that out to you.